Okay. All right, looks like we're recording. So I want to welcome everybody this afternoon. I know some of you, and some of you know me, but my name is Rebecca Vieira. I am the coordinator of the Inter-American Teacher Education Network, which I'll be speaking a little bit more about before handing it off to Allison to speak in a little bit more detail. Actually, I'll just go ahead and let Allison introduce yourself, and then we'll begin.
Sounds good. Hello, everyone. My name is Allison Owens. I'm the project team coordinator, and Rebecca and I will be kind of handing off the baton, if you will, during this presentation. So any specific questions regarding project teams, I'm your gal.
Fabulous. Okay, thank you, Allison. Okay, so I am so happy that we have a group, a fairly large group of people who participated in ITEN's project teams this past cycle, who can help support, give guidance and such for those for whom this is new. So the purpose of this presentation is, in brief, to give an overview of what ITEN is, to give an overview of ITEN's project teams, so that you can figure out how to apply for an ITEN project team for the 2020 cycle. If you participated last year, we're happy you're here because there are some very small little changes, little tweaks. And those from last year, we are also asking you to recommit if you want to, either to your existing team or to consider a new direction. That's also completely fine. So if you have any questions as we go along, Allison, you can help me out with the chat maybe. And there's also a way, I think, to raise your hand, do a digital hand raise, so that we can find a time for you to ask your question. And then we'll also have plenty of time at the end. So I'm going to begin by giving you a very brief overview of what ITEN is. Then we'll take a look at how does ITEN do what it does, when does it do it, and how you can get involved. So the first thing I'll say is our big grand goal is really to ensure that all of the Americas and all students of the Americas have access to quality teachers and quality education. And the way that we do this, it's in our title, we are a network. And so we're really interested in, I'd say, going even beyond network to really becoming community, to not just talking with each other and having dialogue, but to work together collaboratively towards this goal. The way that we try to put this community together is to identify education leaders. And what I mean by that, there's two groups specifically that we look for. The first one is practitioners. So I'm talking about classroom teachers who currently have students in the classroom. The other group that I am talking about is ministry and institutional representatives. Sometimes these are people who are policymakers, sometimes these are people who run programs, but they really interact directly with teachers. So you'll often hear us talk about teachers and policymakers, or teachers and institutional representatives, and we're talking about the same thing. Everything that we do with ITEN is aligned to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 4. And for those who are familiar with the OAS, we also try to coordinate our efforts with the Inter-American Education Agenda, which comes out of the Committee on Inter-American Education, which is composed of the ministers of education of OAS's 34 member states. And I also want to mention this project is graciously funded by the U.S. mission to the OAS, so the United States Department of State. So, if you've been familiar with ITEN in the past, certainly if you've been with us for the last year, you know our focus is on STEM teacher education. If you've been involved with ITEN prior to that, you know we've always been involved in teacher education, but this phase of work, it's a multi-phase for us that goes until 2021, is focused on STEM. And when I say the word STEM, I've already spoken with a number of you, it is a difficult concept to contain neatly. Sometimes the word STEM might mean the disciplines and the fields associated with science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and all their sub-disciplines. For some countries or for some teachers, it might be integration. And we want to acknowledge that every country and every community might have a slightly different interpretation, and we welcome all of those interpretations into ITEN's work. We also, when we talk about teacher education, we're not just talking about pre-service education, although that tends to be a big focus. And we're also not just talking about in-service teacher education. We're talking about all these issues surrounding the teaching profession. So recruitment, professionalism, leadership opportunities, policies. Really, we have a very wide scope of what we're willing to work with. And you may know from last year, we really worked with two groups. We focused on two different areas. We focused on physical sciences in upper secondary, and we also focused on early childhood. While we value those two priorities, we are really opening up this year to be on any area within STEM between early childhood education up through upper secondary education and anything in between. So pretty much anything that involves either the preparation of teachers, which may happen at universities, or teachers' actual classroom practice in pre-university settings. Some of you might want to know why specifically STEM. We're using this lens because it embodies critical thinking very well, one of the many ways to do so. It also is a very fabulous way for using active learning, discourse, multiple representations, which engage literacy of all types, and specifically STEM because there are a lot of gender disparities, specifically with regards to the mathematical and physical sciences, which I'm going to share with you in just right now, actually. I'm just going to click through this. There's a number of different indicators globally, but specific to the Americas as well, that really says that even when girls achieve just as well as boys in STEM, they often don't feel like it. They often don't recognize how capable they are. And some of that is because of parental influence or social influence. But ultimately what we want to do is make sure that every child, every girl, every boy, every young man, every young woman gets the opportunity to see how fabulous STEM is, whether or not they decide to become scientists or engineers, mathematicians, technologists, but to have a very broad general scientific and STEM literacy. So the way that we accomplish this is through a number of mechanisms. We have a cycle of activities, and as I mentioned, this particular phase of ITEN's work spans 3 years, and we are currently entering into our 2nd year. The big thing that everything is based around is project teams, which Allison is responsible for. Project teams, just so you have a sense, they go from May through the end of October, and that's what is open now for application. So we're seeking ideas through January 31st. So what we're asking is if you are interested in being involved, complete an application by January 31st. And between then and May, we take time to help formulate these teams. Then teamwork happens, punctuated by a face-to-face seminar, and then there are opportunities for extended engagement over the remainder of the year through spring following. And we will talk about that briefly as well. One other thing is that we have a teacher fellowship that is currently ongoing for a total of 2 years. This year, this is an important difference. We are not expanding the teacher fellowship as the fellowship is. We're continuing with that particular group of teachers where we're doing some education research, some intense professional development. We are requiring participation of additional teachers this year if you don't currently have teachers involved in your country or in your project team, and they will just become part of a general teacher community as opposed to having all the requirements that Teacher Fellows had that participated and started last year. And I'm happy to answer more questions about that after the presentation. So with this, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Allison so she can tell us about project teams.
Excellent. All right, everyone. So just a quick introduction. Again, my name's Allison, and I'm the project teams coordinator. So if you choose to embark on this journey of project teams, you will be having a lot more contact with me. So here you can see our timeline. This is just kind of the simplified version of what you just saw that just shows specifically project teamwork. And below the photo is one of our project teams at the seminar this last year. That many of you who are attending this webinar are in that photo, so welcome. On to the next. There we go. Okay, so what are project teams? So project teams are one of our tools for building trust learning and collaborative problem solving. So the whole purpose with project teams, there are a couple of things that we want to focus on. So obviously our subject matter is STEM across the board, but what else is behind the teachers and the teaching profession and the whole purpose behind project teams? First off, our teachers are the ones who are implementing all of the most important practices in our children, right? In terms of just their growth in general and us having successful societies. But on top of that, they don't often have a lot of power. They don't often have a lot of knowledge of how to reach the levels that they need to reach in order to get access for levels of education that may not exist in all regions. So the purpose of the project teams is to start that conversation between teachers, teacher educators, and ministry reps or institutional representatives, people who have a different level of influence on the education system, and in our case, in STEM education in our regions. Okay. So just to break it down a little bit for you all and exactly how a project team is put together. And those of you who are with us today who were part of a team in this last cycle, please pay attention because this is a little bit different than our last, our 2019 cycle. So if you take a look here where it says project team, you'll see 2 lines below because we have a minimum for a project team. It's going to require 2 institutional teams minimum in order to make one big project team. And we've had up to 4 institutional teams working together. So from last year's cycle, we referred to these as member state teams or country teams instead of institutional teams. We're changing that because we ended up having, for example, from Jamaica, we had not only ministry reps as our institutional representatives, but we also had people from the MICO and from other different institutions that are not necessarily the ministries. So keeping that in mind, our institutional team starts with one of those representatives. Those representatives are responsible for turning in the proposal, for being part of a team. And that institutional representative can look like a representative from the Ministry of Education. It can look like someone who's the dean of a college or someone who's working in STEM education at some other institution who heads that up. And then as we go into STEM teachers, now this is something also that we want to be very explicit with. Obviously, as an early childhood educator, you're not just focusing on STEM, so we understand that, but the whole purpose of the STEM teacher is if you are in a secondary education position and let's say that you're the representatives of the ministry who work specifically in secondary education and you're seeking out to start a team, you need to seek out teachers who are secondary, so high school in the US, secondary educators in STEM fields, specifically practicing teachers. So not someone who was a teacher 10 years ago, someone who is in the classroom today teaching students. And that goes for the early childhood educators as well. We just want to make sure that those are early childhood educators in classrooms today. That is the title STEM teacher. That's what we're referring to.
And also to make it clear that's different from last year is we absolutely welcome primary teachers, middle school teachers, even if they do not explicitly call themselves STEM teachers. If they are generalists who are teaching STEM, they are eligible to participate. So yes, all teachers from early childhood up through pre-college kinds of courses that teach STEM in some way or any of the disciplines of STEM are eligible.
Right. And the third member there is any other stakeholder, which is optional. So for example, this could be a teacher educator, so someone who specifically is working, say, at a university or college, teaching how to teach, right? Teaching teachers. So that would be one example of another stakeholder. And those are all, again, they're optional, but it's also something that if you have an idea of someone who would be great to be part of one of these teams, and you have a question about whether or not that's an optional stakeholder, if that's a person that would be fitting for the team, please feel free to ask, because we're pretty open. We just want to get all the right people who really are dedicated to this whole mission. So just an overview of that to recap. Specifically this year, project teams are going to consist of these institutional teams, and the 2 required participants are an institutional representative who will turn in the proposal, and then they have to recruit that one teacher, STEM teacher, anywhere from early childhood and primary through on up to secondary education. Okay, so those are the 2 minimum requirement for starting an institutional team. And then the more the merrier, so they just all have to be on the application. Thank you. Okay, so just a little bit more about how to define a project. So these three key components are the basis for how do you choose a project. So those of you who are going to be turning in proposals, you might say, okay, well, we do have all these challenges in STEM, but how do we define it, and what does a project consist of? So challenge focused is the main point. We need this to be something that if you have a challenge in STEM, you know, you're unable to get women in STEM. Let's say all of your STEM teachers in your entire country are men. I realize that's not reality, but to exaggerate the point. And that's your challenge. How do we get more girls in STEM in this case, right? And so that could be a problem. The idea of it transcending borders is the point that you're working on an institutional team that's going to be working with other institutional teams, possibly from other countries, which means ideally this would be a problem that maybe they also have in their respective regions. Okay. And then time-bound and outcome-driven is specifically referring to our specific cycle. So we have 6 months to really work from starting our conversations with one another via Zoom every other week, to creating this project, developing it, researching it, to the point that at the end of 6 months, you've got something to share out with one another. So you've got an actual concrete, at least framework for something that can be useful across the region. The idea of sharing our resources and really networking that. And we'll talk more about what could be possibly achievable in 6 months, because I realize that seems like a very short amount of time. And then continuous learning. So obviously that this project is conducive to continuous learning and is sustainable.
Right. So I'm going to take a moment to give you just an example of what project teams can do. The example I'm giving to you is very nicely packaged because they've been able to accomplish a lot in a short period of time. It's not the pathway that every country takes or that every institutional team takes. It's just an example of one possibility. And let me go ahead and put on my camera so that you can see me. There we go. So what we've got here on the image are the countries that participated last year. You can certainly learn more about them if you look at the online website. But right now I'm going to just take you really quickly to the country of Trinidad and Tobago. It's a country that came to us and said, you know, we're really interested in looking at how to integrate STEM into early childhood. We've heard a lot of the Caribbean countries have STEM in early childhood written into their standards, but don't necessarily yet have programs developed to explicitly support teacher preparation in STEM. So early this year, when the application process was open, we got interest from a number of countries. We do work with Spanish and English speaking countries, and we typically divide, you know, English speakers and Spanish speakers separately. But then even within that, we have different groups and different topics. There was a group in Arizona that was also very interested in early childhood, and the Micro University had also expressed some interest. And so we were able to pair all three, or put together all three of those countries in order to work on their selected topic or their selected challenge. I'm going to let Allison explain a little bit more about what these commitments actually entail, and then I'll tell you about what those countries did.
Awesome. So specifically the team commitments, and so when we say team, we're referring to that entire project team of all the institutional teams that join, and we're specifically asking for the following. It's going to be 2 to 3 virtual meetings per month, so usually we meet every other week, and so roughly specifically for that institutional rep, that's going to be 2 to 5 hours of work per week for research and planning and communications and things like that. The team portfolio is something that we have. We share documents via Google Drive amongst the team, and that's something that will be kept up by all team members throughout the entirety of the project. Attendance to the annual seminar, which is about 4 days in August, and then the final share out is a team webinar. So that's the very last item on the agenda for the team after the 6 months. And then, of course, throughout we do have evaluation surveys that really just help us keep track, take data, and utilize that data in order to better the project and in order to continue receiving funding. And then, of course, the ITEN commitments, we commit to everyone, of course, in providing support from the network. So the ITEN network is pretty vast, and of course, having us here as your key liaisons to help you all become a part of that network. And then at the annual seminar, what we provide to the teams is per institutional team. So remember, project team as a whole has 2 to 4 institutional teams as a part of it. And for each of those institutional teams will receive 2 flights, 2 hotel rooms, meals, and on-site travel for the seminar.
And again, as Allison mentioned, we do welcome additional individuals who are participating in project teams to attend the seminar. We can't necessarily provide flights and hotel rooms, but we certainly can provide on-site meals during the event, local transportation, things like that. So with regards to, again, going back to Trinidad and Tobago, they formed a partnership with the MICO in Jamaica and also with Arizona in the United States. And they specifically wanted to tackle the issue that they found, which was that a lot of early childhood teachers had not had positive experiences with STEM and therefore didn't feel comfortable teaching it. And so they really wanted to work on how do we build confidence? How do we build competence in teaching STEM at that grade level? And so the vision that they created together was to have a series of professional development opportunities that would support these teachers as well as a community of practice. But they knew they couldn't accomplish that within 6 months. So what they set for themselves was one goal that within 6 months, they would develop just a one-day workshop that could be used with early childhood teachers. They said that the first half would be focused on topics that teachers might be comfortable with, like, I don't know, like biology, for example, the life sciences, the human body. But then the second half of the day would be focused on pushing teachers a little bit more, things like towards the physical sciences where they may not have had as much experience. And what they were able to accomplish in 6 months and what they're continuing to do has really been exciting. And we found this really with all of our project teams. The reason I'm singling out Trinidad here is because just within the past couple of months, October 24th and then throughout much of November, they actually were able to run 4 days of these workshops, impacting 41 administrators and 352 teachers, which I understand to be all of the early childhood educators on the island of Trinidad. So in collaborating with their other 2 partners, they were able to take ideas and put together a manual, which you see here on the right, and actually pilot these activities in the classrooms of the teachers who participated in ITEN, and then work as a whole collaborative team to offer all these workshops. And it's going beyond just the Trinidad. So we'll, just Trinidad and Tobago. So we'll go ahead and share a little bit more about that later, about some of their extended activities. But I just wanted to show you, they shared with us some media, things that they did, highly interactive, highly engaging. And I've been able to talk with all the team that participated in this, and you can just feel the enthusiasm grow, and you can see the ripples of excitement go across the country with regards to STEM integration. Like I mentioned, part of the reason why I think this has been so exciting is because 2 of our teacher fellows have really been at the core of this work. So last year, we all the teachers that were nominated participated and are still participating in a 2-year-long professional development teacher fellowship program. And we're really excited that any of the teachers that participate this year will be invited into that community. Like I said, they won't have the same explicit requirements for engaging in some of the research, but there will be opportunities for leadership and for recognition.
Great. Yeah, so let's go over quickly the seminars. So each year we have our ITEN annual seminar in August, and this is a picture of us last year having a good time at the seminar. Oh, next slide.
Oops, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So just to give you all a little overview of what that looks like. So this will be a 4-day face-to-face event, and for policymakers, but also including our teachers. So all of our institutional teams, again, they will be provided the 2 flights for at least those 2 members to attend, and then anyone else that they're willing to support to attend can do so. The whole point of the seminar is for all of us to get together face to face and talk about these things. I mean, we can do webinars all day, but we all know it's not the same as all being in the same room and being able to laugh and share these ideas and share what you're truly passionate about. It's just completely different to do so in person. So it's probably our most important event in terms of connection. It's also an opportunity for the teams to showcase the work that they're doing. So this last seminar, we had a day where we put up all of the posters that all the teams have created, and it was just incredible to see the amount of work on paper, on something tangible, right? So being able to showcase that also is really just an opportunity for other people to get ideas and to give other ideas, to give feedback. Because the best way that you can do better at bettering education in your regions is listening to one another's issues and helping each other understand more about them so you can solve those issues. So let's see. Yeah, so the expected engagement for the seminar specifically is the poster presentation, and then a plenary presentation and table discussion. And this is all organized with, we have speakers that attend. All of the missions are invited and the ministries are invited, even those who are not part of teams. So anyone who wants to come on their dime is really invited through these. So it's an opportunity for some great networking and an opportunity for you all to really showcase and get feedback.
And just so for the folks who participated last year, it was a 2-day event. This year, we will not be having the Teacher Fellowship Workshop Week, which happens previous, but instead what we will do is have 4 days. So it'll be 3.5 to 4 days of activities with space to breathe, time to collaborate, and also to do some hands-on workshop things with the teachers. We heard your requests, and we're definitely trying to be responsive to that.
Yeah, these are just some examples, some pictures from our last seminar. So at the top left, just general examples of engagement during different discussions. On the top right, you've got one of our project teams presenting, giving their plenary. The bottom right is an example of the posters, and then the bottom left is an example of what it looks like to be in one of the plenaries and taking feedback from the audience.
Great.
Yeah.
So there are some opportunities for extended engagement. As Allison mentioned, project teams go through basically the end of October, but right after the seminar, we're going to give a little bit more time than we did this past year. Probably, is it about maybe 4 weeks, I think? We're going to give a little bit more time than we did before, so that you can apply for funds from the OAS in order to engage in what we call cooperation exchanges, which are on-site visits and face-to-face get-togethers with partners, as well as for something called seed grants, which allows you to implement in your home country. Cooperation exchanges occur basically in the fall and the spring after the project team work has taken place. This is a picture here from an exchange that happened between Argentina and Colombia and was, I think, wonderfully successful. There'll be a number more happening soon. It's really an opportunity to do work with each other, but also to see what each other's context is like. So in the case of Argentina and Colombia, they went to Medellin and they learned about how STEM plus H, STEM plus the humanities, has become really pervasive throughout the entire society, entire city. And then they went to Argentina, where they really went in depth with conversations about creating an online virtual platform for teacher mentoring in STEM education. We also have seed grants, which, like I said, are implementation funds up to $10,000 to help you to run a workshop, to try something new, to create some kind of a product, you can apply for both of those funds. You don't just have to apply for one. So in the case of going back to our story with Trinidad, that whole partnership decided to be really creative and decided to apply for cooperation exchange and seed grants in order to do some things that were collaborative. Arizona happens to be a really hot spot for learning about low-cost resources for teaching STEM in early childhood. So they worked with actually 3 different partners: Jamaica, also with Trinidad and Tobago, and then also Costa Rica, who they met in person at the seminar. And all 3 of those countries received funds to go to Arizona. Arizona, in turn, received a seed grant in order to run a workshop that is built off of what they have all been collaboratively designing together. And then Jamaica and Costa Rica received some seed grants in order to take what they learned from Arizona back to their home countries. And to do workshops for teachers. So our goal is to get people to think beyond borders, to get people to start thinking about really creating meaningful collaborative networks with one another, and to spread the love a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And throughout this whole process, one thing that we do request and require is constant feedback and sharing out. And so you'll see here at the end of all project teams, there is a webinar that we ask you to do. So beyond sharing within the seminar and giving your plenary presentations within only the network, we do ask people to present afterwards in a public space so that more of the region can benefit from what's happening right now in the Americas. So we come to the end of our presentation. I do want to say, if you have not seen our report, we have reported activities now from basically May through November. In the report, we'll send out this PowerPoint and we'll have the hyperlink in it. But if you just go to our website and click on Learn More About Project Teams, you will get access to the report. It will give you an example of some of the things that have been done over the past year, and I will say a lot of it's in progress because there's still a lot great that's yet to come. So if you want to become an active member of ITEN through project teams, the first thing you should really do is to read a community guide, which Allison very lovingly put together so that people can understand the big scope of what we're trying to accomplish and what the steps and deadlines are along the way. The second thing, if you didn't participate last year in project teams, please set up an appointment with me and Allison so that we can talk things through, learn a little bit more about the goals of your institution. And then the last thing is to submit an idea proposal. That is due on January 31st, 2020. I will also say it is limited. We welcome more than one application per country. We welcome more than one application per institution, but these are competitive. We have limited numbers of funds. We think we can fund around 25 institutional teams. And so, if you look at the guide that Allison's put together, it has guidelines for what is it that makes us competitive? What is it that makes the application, the idea, and the team competitive? So we strongly urge you to take a look at that. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Allison?
No, if you all have questions, we are here for you.
All right. Anybody have any questions for us?
And please feel free to go ahead and just unmute yourself and ask the questions.
I see, let's see, I think I see one person. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, I don't know what your name is, but I can hear you now. Oh,
no, we can't
actually,
hear you.
We can't hear you. 1 second. Not sure.
It might be your audio, Shanella. We can't hear you.
Is it Shanella?
I think so, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
Shanella, for
Is your
some
volume
reason.
up?
Oh, let me check. Hold on. Yeah, my volume is up. Shanella, can you take off your headphones?
Okay, my volume is up too. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. What I was saying now, I am from Tobago, and I have seen you're putting up what took place in Trinidad and Tobago. However, that was only done in Trinidad because I am in Tobago and I have never heard of it at all through my ministry at all here, right? So this is like news to me coming out because everything took place in Trinidad, but it did not take place in the island of Tobago. So we are two different islands. So this has not come over to us.
So
however,
let's expand. Yes, it would be great to expand.
Right. So what happened, right? In 2017, I started a STEM program because nobody on the island knew what STEM education is or was. So I went around from school to school for the whole of 2017, the whole of 2018. I went around from school to school on my own and tried to sensitize because I applied to the Ministry of Education in Tobago because in Tobago it's not the Ministry of Education, it is the Division of Education. So I applied to the Division of Education in September of 2017 to allow me to be able to let them know what STEM education is. However, because it was new and they did not know what it was about, they did not give me the go-ahead. So what I did on my initiative, because of my passion for it, I decided to fund it out of my pocket and go from school to school in the PTAs. So there I have the teachers and the parents where I would talk to them about it. For 2019, I did not do so because my job is a part-time job, so they don't afford me all the time the funding to fund out of my pocket to going around and buying the equipment because I bought like projectors, I do flyers, I did a lot of things to sensitize. And I even had like one-day workshop for children and parents and so on. But that was just me trying to do so much for an entire island. So what I'm saying is that if Tobago to get the representation, then I think that this initiative will be a great one because, as I said, it was only Trinidad that was able to do so, and me alone in Tobago that doing it, and I still continue. But for this year, as I said, I wasn't able to continue as I would like to because of the funding coming out of my pocket personally, and not all the time I have it to do so for this year because every I will go every time school opens. So every term school open, the school open in September, I will go. School open in January, I will go. The school open in the Easter period. So every term I will go and then I will talk to parents and so. So I think it's something that Tobago itself will need to have something like that. So I'm grateful for this.
So first of all, congratulations on everything you're doing. I mean, that sounds absolutely fabulous. So, so what I think I'm hearing from you is, so first of all, the division can absolutely apply. And so I don't have contacts in Tobago, but if you want me to give you the contacts in Trinidad, I'm certainly happy to put you in touch with them. But if Tobago can also find a representative, I'm assuming, are you currently a teacher?
Yes, I'm not teaching the early childhood.
So fabulous. So it would be wonderful to see if we can get somebody from the division and have both of you apply together. That would be very, very welcome. So you have my email, hopefully. Please send me an email and we'll see what we can do.
My thing is this, right? Because I have been fighting for this and not reaching anywhere. If I could get a backing from OAS stating this, because I told you I have written letters. My last letter sent in was to even host a camp for next year, and I still haven't received anything. I have been trying. I've been sending letters. So if I could get your end to assist me to the division, I will be happy with that.
Wonderful.
So they would not just see that me trying to do something on my own, but that they will see that it is something that is important.
Absolutely, yes, I understand. Thank you for your question. I'm going to move on to a next question real quick. But Sheila, please send me an email at rviera. I'm going to go back to the prior slide just so that you can see my email. Please drop me an email so that we can help you out.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I see a couple of questions about steps for new participants. So basically what you need to do is if you just Google OAS ITEN, I'll show you exactly how to get there. I will send out these slides so that you can see, let me stop my share real quick. I will be sending out the slides so that everybody can see the links, but getting to the OAS webpage is really quite easy. I'll just do this very quickly. So if you just Google OAS ITEN and go to the ITEN website, there's a big banner. It says join an ITEN project team, learn more and apply here. You'll click there and there are 3 steps. The first thing that we strongly encourage you to do is to read the community guide, which is this document right here. The second thing, attend the webinar, which you've done. And then the last one is to submit an idea proposal. And the idea proposal, please, you can see all of it before you submit it. It basically asks you to identify the 2 required individuals, to briefly define the issue that you would like to work on, to include CVs, and then basically explain, you know, what other partners you might be interested in working with. You do not need to identify other countries at this point, but if you have any in mind and particular individuals in mind, that's always helpful as well. Okay? What other questions might we have at this point? See any others, Allison? Bhagya, I see you've got a question. I'll go ahead and unmute you. Go ahead. Oops, I can't hear you, Bhagya. Try disconnecting your headphones.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Good afternoon. My question is the proposal. Can it be a diversification of the project that we did in the last cycle?
Yes, it absolutely can be different. So if you came in working on something last year, while of course we'd like to see things sustained in some way, if you're ready to look at a different idea, if you're ready to have different partners, If you're ready
Okay.
to work on a different grade level or a different topic, that's completely fine.
Okay, thank you so much. Do you have any questions? No?
Hello.
Yes. Hello, go ahead and unmute yourself and go ahead and speak up. I'm sorry, I can't see what the name is.
Alicia did
Yeah, I'm Alicia. Are you hearing me?
I am.
Mhm.
Hi. Hello.
Okay, sorry. As you realize, or may not realize, I have a little person here. So, I'm from Trinidad. So my question is, but I teach in tertiary education actually. I teach primarily computer programming and database design and maintenance. And one area I'm particularly interested in is bringing programming education to primary school level.
Oh, great.
So I just want to clarify that because I am teaching at the tertiary level, but my project is for the primary school level, it means that I will need to find a primary school teacher to be because you said the team has to be comprised, there are 2 mandatory participants for each team. One is a teacher, and I'm assuming the teacher has to be at the school level. So that would be a primary school teacher. And then a ministry representative would be the second person.
So it does not necessarily need to be a ministry representative. What's the institution you are affiliated with?
COSTAT, College of Science, Technology, and Applied Arts of Trinidad and Tobago.
So you could be the representative for the college, and you could apply separately. Of course, we strongly recommend that there's coordination between teams within countries, but you're certainly welcome to apply separately.
So
as your own institution, but yes, you would need a classroom practicing teacher.
Classroom practicing teacher myself. So if we can get someone from the ministry on board, is that what you're suggesting? If we could.
What I'm saying is it's not required. So. Okay. Trinidad currently has an institutional team that is working on early childhood, and yes. I presume that they would want to apply separately because the way we are making it work is we are providing funds for those selected teams. We're providing funds for 2 flights, so they probably wouldn't want to have a team of 3 or 4 people.
Okay.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Because they might view it as having to give up a position themselves. So right. I strongly encourage. Here's what we do. As you saw, like with what Trinidad did with Arizona and Costa Rica, they all applied for money differently, but they all coordinated with each other. And then they shared that information with us. And that's very helpful to us. And I think it strongly, very, very much strengthens the application. So what I'm saying is, I think it would be good for you to get in contact with the individuals at the Ministry of Education so that you understand what they're doing. I welcome you to apply as your college is a separate institution, but I think it would be good for you to connect with each other.
Okay.
Does that help?
I think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Feel free to email us as well if you need any further clarification or if we can help with any sort of connection.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Could I ask a question again, please?
Yes, go ahead.
Right, so I'm going to talk to my supervisors at the Division of Education after this. However, I had started a STEM class that is registered. It is registered here in Tobago because, as I said, I was the only one doing it, you know, because I wasn't getting the support from the division at the time. So I registered the STEM program and started it with early childhood level children from 5 years old, from 5 to 12 years old. I'm asking, in the interim, could I apply also under the organization name that I have registered as well?
If it is considered a teacher education institution, if it's like an organization, what it really comes down to, Chanel, I think we need to have a separate conversation, just you and me and Allison, to understand your circumstance a little bit better, because typically our partnerships are with educational institutions and government agencies. If it is like a small nonprofit, it depends upon how big it is, because that would have an impact on eligibility to receive funds and things like that, and to be able to make legal commitments.
Okay, because so, it is a registered educational program specifically for computer science and STEM education in Tobago. specifically.
Understood. Yeah, so let's have a separate conversation because I just don't have enough information
Okay.
to answer
Okay.
you about
Well, I
that.
will email you. I will email you.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Yes. All right. Oh, I see a question from Sadfa. Go ahead, Sadfa.
Yes. Just one thing I need to clear up here. Last time around, we had our teams comprised of, say, sub-teams from different countries.
Yes.
Will this be the same thing this year?
Yes, so you're welcome to do that again. And by sub-teams, you mean like the Ministry of Education had a team in early childhood and a team working on middle and high school. That's completely acceptable. Yeah, we do not have a limitation on the number of institutional applications per institution or per country.
And also, does it mean that a team has to be comprised of members from different territories?
A project team has to have at least 2 different institutions. In almost every case, we would love that to be across country borders.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean, for example, let's just say if there were 2 teams within Jamaica that wanted to work together and wanted to work with a 3rd external party, I have no opposition to that. But the idea is that everything we do, we really want to have a regional cross borders focus. So at some level, we want to make sure that there's multinational, participation. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And finally, the team association will be done at your level.
Correct. So if you have recommendations for partners, please list them within your application, and we will certainly respect those things as long as everybody agrees to those. But there are many countries that often do not have contacts internationally, and so we will help facilitate organizing that. But it's always a voluntary process. We're not going to force anybody into a relationship. Yeah. That being said, we do require relationships in order to move forward.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe just to add a little anecdote to that, for everybody who was watching as we went through our slides to kind of describe how this works, if you remember the map where it shows the connections with the arrows of the different countries. So we had Arizona US team, the MICO in Jamaica, and then Trinidad and Tobago. We had those 3 groups working together. Those are each individual institutional teams. And the way they got paired was there was a whole bunch of early childhood education groups that sent in proposals. Let's say we had 10. We had one meeting with everybody on Zoom, all of those applications specifically of that area, and we had them each share with each other exactly what it is they're working on, so that we could start the conversation of, well, oh, it looks like you're working on this and we want to work on that, and this is similar to what we're doing, maybe the 3 of us can. And that's how that develops. So you see those different connections, and in the end, in Costa Rica, they have the faculties of speaking English really well in this specific group of people that were part of a Spanish-speaking. And in the end, because of the initiatives that they're all working on, and there were shared initiatives, they even then, after the project team work, decided to work on the cooperation exchange together. So helping to kind of alleviate some of those language barriers even. So there really is there's a lot of room for interpretation when it comes to working across borders. And so that's how we will put you all into groups if you don't already come into this thinking, oh yeah, well, we're, Jamaica and Trinidad and Dominican Republic, we all want to work together. If you know that already, that's great. Like Rebecca said, we're willing to absolutely respect that. But if you don't have any idea who might be working on the same sorts of issues, we're happy to make those connections for you. That is the whole purpose and strength of what the ITEN network can do.
If there's no other questions at this time, please feel free to drop me an email for sure, and we'd be happy to have a one-on-one conversation with you or with your institution. Everything is due on January 31st. And we cannot guarantee accepting any applications after that, because our process does need to start in the spring in order to for everybody, so that things work out well and everything's very streamlined. So with that, thank you to everyone who attended, and we look forward to hopefully receiving your applications.
Everyone.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Thank you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.